Science lives through discourse. Yet what happened over the last few years or decades is we have an increasing recognition of what we call facilitation. So acts of mediation where impartial people that are not personally involved in the research process try to help people with differing opinions, with different perceptions, with conflicts, to overcome them and work together. So this sounds a little bit more harsh than it usually is, but there's no doubt that facilitation and mediation is of growing importance in science, and rightly so. It's often that we have conflicts, there's often a dominance of certain knowledge, and suppressed voices are not heard. So there's all sorts of power things going on. So definitely we can claim that these different types of facilitation are very important. But here's another thought. Science also lives through discourse. It's often disagreements that people have that move a specific branch of science forward. People have a new idea, and this new idea is radical, and it breaks with the old ideas. People have a different idea. And in the beginning, it's usually one person or maybe few people, maybe a team. And they work against the grain. They work against the dominating paradigm. And this is how we know how these things work. Well, here comes the other thing, and this is connected to a thought of Larry Lorden. When we look at the history of science, then it's very clear that how science evolves are not reasonable processes. These are processes that are not only chaotic, but that are hard to track, hard to understand, and that are definitely not reasonable. Science is chaos. It's disagreements, and what's more important, it cannot always be planned. So how science evolves is more often than not a quite chaotic process. And what people think today that excellence can be planned, well, some can be, but it's not literally the case. So, and out of that perspective, that things are not always plannable, if things are not always plannable, then maybe it's also not possible to facilitate agreement all the time, because it's not a reasonable process. But here is a catch. We shouldn't have this suppression of thought. We should have integration of diversity. So that's definitely the case. So I would say there should always be some sort of a bottom up, so that everybody has a chance to bring in their knowledge, and that it cannot be suppressed. So that's important, that we have a certain facilitation that guarantees this sort of diversity. But any scientific thought that was new was alienating the old. And that's why we need discourse in the established procedures and norms that we have within science, which is through publication, through conferences, and through sometimes very often informal discussions between scientists. And these can be quite riddled with conflicts. And what is then important is that this is facilitated and transparent enough so that it's not hierarchical. That's the other thing. That lower hierarchies in the academic system shouldn't be suppressed. That's very important, obviously. And this is something where we have to learn every day. And that's where facilitation is highly relevant at all. But people on a peer level that can look at each other as peers, they also need to be able to have scientific discourse. If there's no power things at play, and of course this is a very idealized world, but still, then you can have disagreements. And I would claim that for the long-term evolvement of science, that is very important. That's like radical thoughts, as I said, are always something new. And that's why we need disagreement within civil boundaries. There needs to be a certain top and bottom that safeguards this process. But still, discourse is disagreement. Radical ideas are new and they alienate the old. And that's how we move forward. And if we can bring facilitation into this system, then I would say we all win.